This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let's talk a little bit about Pat, the wrestler. He first comes to back then everybody called the company New York. So he first comes to New York and they want to put him right away against the champion, Bob Backlund. This is in 79. He mentioned Bob in a very, very favorable way in his Hall of Fame speech that I watched last week. And we've often talked about Bob as sort of the transitional guy. I mean, he was champion for a long time, but it felt like business was super hot with Bruno. It maintained and maybe dipped a little bit with Bob Backlund, but the next big run for the company is going to be with Hulk Hogan. What was that relationship like with Pat and Bob?
At first, it was, I don't know that Bob necessarily trusted Pat because, Bobby was an incredible amateur wrestler and Bob was a champion in the Garden. And I think that some people believe Bob was made champion to prove a point to Bruno Sammartino. And as time went on, Bobby had his own following there. And the challenge was who can have a great match with Bob Backlund. And I think that Pat looked at that and saw an opportunity with Bobby being similar size. Pat wasn't the biggest guy in the world, but the way that Pat worked, and he was a nasty heel, that Pat actually got, normally you would get one shot at the champ, maybe two. Some guys got three. Pat got four out of Backlund.
That was a record, by the way. No one had gotten a world title shot 4 times. To further explain what you were saying, they're going to try you challenging for the title on top. If you're a good draw, maybe you'll get a second time. But you've got to keep those sellouts going. And if you're drawing really strong houses, they'll keep doing it. But when it starts to taper, they're going to move on to the next challenger. And they went with Pat, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times, which was a record at the time.
Right. And the crazy thing about it was when you look back at New York in the time, the managers just made TV. So you had Fred Blassie, Albano, the Grand Wizard, those guys, they only appeared on TV and they didn't go to all of the live events, but they all made the Garden. However, all they did in the Garden was they would walk out with whoever they managed, and then they would come back to the dressing room before the match started. So you never had, like every other territory, you didn't have a manager that stayed at ringside. Too much heat. Oh my God, you can't have a manager at ringside. There's just too much heat. And Pat convinced Vince Sr. to allow the Grand Wizard to stay at ringside for their third match and everything. And he was also able to stay there and had Skolin in Backlund's corner. And it was just incredible, just the business that they did, the fact that he was able to come back and do it 4 times. And that's also where you get to the Pat, the double knockouts, and don't move and lay there like a douchebag, and you fucking lay still, don't move a pinky. And for the boys that heard that and would go back and tell me how much they loved, Pat explaining that to them and how antsy it is when you're a performer and you're in the middle of the ring and you're laying there and you hear the audience all around you. And instinct is you want to move, you want to start selling, you want to make some kind of movement.
You're full of adrenaline.
Yeah. But if you just lay there and you don't move a muscle, the swell of the audience that comes up and you can feel that audience get hotter and hotter and hotter because nothing's happening and they're anticipating now it's who's going to move first. And he goes back to Backlund and Pat talks about, screaming at Backlund in the ring, don't fucking move. And how Bobby was almost couldn't help himself, but did, and came back afterwards like that was the most incredible feeling ever. So it was, Pat working with Backlund, Pat with Sergeant Slaughter. Holy shit. Their boot camp match that they had, which is one of the greatest matches you'll ever see. It was just pure magic because of the heat that Sarge had. Pat by that time was a babyface, but it was like, holy shit. It hadn't been done. And people in the New York area, in the Garden, whether they realized it or not, they were seeing history with Pat doing the first time having four returns in a row with the champion. It was history. That was Pat. That was Pat's idea. Those were Pat's finishes that he came up with the old man, as he says, and constantly would, even then, be thinking of different ways to coming up with finish, not just for himself, but for other guys on the card.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.